Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I am your host, Dr. Heidi Horsley, and I'm here today talking about a very important topic, grieving a suicide loss. And I think loss is very difficult, but then when you have suicide, I think it makes it even more difficult because oftentimes it can be a stigmatized loss and people don't know what to say. So sometimes they don't say anything, which makes it even more difficult. And we're here today with two people that are experts in this topic, and I'm going to be asking them about how to help people that have had a suicide loss, what to say and what not to say, and how to find hope again after this kind of a loss. Right next to me is my friend Zaneta Gileno. Hi, Zaneta.
Hi.
She's been on our show before and is a dear friend. Zaneta is a grief professional, social worker, and psychotherapist. When she was just 10 years old, her dad died of a heart attack. And in 2023, her mom died of lung issues. Zaneta has a private practice where she sees people that have had a suicide loss. It is called Rising Psychotherapy and Wellness, which offers individual grief and trauma work and hosts adventures and retreats. Zaneta is an adjunct professor at Columbia University. She teaches grief and loss and trauma, and she talks a lot about suicide loss in her classes. She currently serves as the Senior Mental Health Advisor and board member for Repatriate Our Patriots. Zaneta previously worked as the Director of Community-Based Care at the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, known as TAPS. Welcome, Zaneta.
Thank you.
And next to her is another dear friend, Kim Burdett Bartlett. And Kim, in 2010, unfortunately, Kim's little brother, her younger brother, John, died by suicide at just 27 years old. Her life was forever changed. Since that time, both Kim's parents have died, her dad in 2016 and her mom in 2022. Kim is the co-founder of Sibling Strong Retreats. She serves as senior manager of family engagement for the Black Box Project at Stop Soldier Suicide, and we will talk a lot about that on this show. It is a groundbreaking initiative using digital data to better understand and prevent suicide. Kim also has a master's degree in social work. She previously worked at the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, which is TAPS. Both Zaneta and Kim worked there together, where Kim created trauma-informed programs, events, and resources for survivors. Welcome, Kim.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
So I think we're going to start with you, Kim, because you both worked a lot in suicide, but you've had a personal experience with your brother, John.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So when my brother died by suicide in 2010, we had no context for that. I would never say that that type of loss is worse than any other type of death or sudden death. I don't know that to be true. I don't want to know, but it was definitely more layered, more complicated. There were things that I think we navigated that, I haven't had to navigate in other losses. John's story was not one of, years of struggle that we knew of. His death was relatively out of the blue for us. And again, we didn't have any context for that. I didn't know anyone, prior to John who had died by suicide. I think I kind of peripherally knew some people, maybe someone that I went to high school with, his mom died, or, but no one, close. We were very lucky in the sense that I'm from Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is pretty resource rich when it comes to prevention, but then also they do dedicate a good portion of funding to prevention, and a piece of that is for postvention, which is the work of caring for those impacted by a suicide loss. So my family, we were connected pretty early on to suicide-specific grief support, and for us, it made all the difference in the world, because it is such a stigmatizing loss. I didn't think a lot about suicide before my brother died because I had no real reason to. I shudder to think maybe some of the things that I might have said because I just didn't know. I was blissfully ignorant, and wouldn't I love to go back and be that ignorant again, right? We don't know what we don't know. So, but getting that support was so validating and affirming for what we were experiencing because, just learning about all the ways that grief impacts us, all the ways that, cognitively, well, that's why I had brain fog and I couldn't find my ATM card, it was grief. Oh, okay. The physical feelings of grief, and then all of the specifics to suicide loss, suicide loss it's so difficult to sort of reconcile, because the person that you are grieving and love is the one that caused the death, is the one that did it. And it's very hard to, I think, reconcile those two feelings at the same time, to be able to it just feels so foreign, right? Because you want to blame someone, you want to point a finger somewhere, and you can't, because they're the ones that did it, and they're the ones that you're missing and loving.
Mm-hmm. So, Zaneta, I know that you've worked with a lot of people that have had a suicide loss. What are your thoughts about this, and what is unique about this?
Some of the unique factors that come with suicide loss, I think, is it can be stigmatizing for survivors, as Kim spoke about that. But it's also the loss I see that has some religious implications for people. Like, it becomes a stigma religiously for some people. And I don't know that really takes place in other types of losses to that depth, right?
Yeah, I would agree. My family, again, I didn't have really any reason to think about suicide before, but we come from a Christian background, but my best friend on her way to my parents' house told me later, she called our pastor and said, what do I say to Kim? And I had to kind of wrestle with what do I believe? I was like confronted with it, in that, like, what do you believe happens to people who die by suicide?
And what was that answer?
So it's interesting. In my work, throughout the years, now that I've been able to work in the field, I did do a little bit of research. No modern religion believes that suicide is a sin, that you go to hell for that. But that doesn't mean that some practitioners, or even some faith leaders, some clergy, or don't maybe still subscribe to that. And that's where it can be very damaging for loss survivors when, they're told your person is going to hell. I don't believe that. From a Christian perspective, I believe that Jesus came to forgive sins, and sin is a sin, right? We're all sinners, right? And there's no one that is as heartbroken as God is. John was God's child before he was even my parents' child. So, he is absolutely heartbroken that that John was in so much pain, so much emotional pain, that he chose to end his life. And I do think, John left a note, and John wrote, I hope God will forgive me and take me in his arms. And I know that he did. I know that he did.
Yeah, so, I love this. Yeah. And your thoughts on this, Zaneta?
I mean, I would agree with Kim, and I would hope people that are survivors of suicide loss really understand that a lot of what came out after World War II was to protect veterans. Absolutely. When they didn't know why so many veterans were taking their life. The Catholic Church came out and said that it was a sin, and it was to protect people, and they've later come out and said that wasn't true.
In 1994, the Pope rescinded that.
The Pope rescinded and said they did it as a way to instill in people, to try to save people from taking their life after the war. And
I didn't know this, Zaneta.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know. And like Kim said, like, some religious people may still hold on to it, but also they could have heard it, and they're not going and researching it, and so they're passing that on. Yeah. It's hard enough to deal with loss without someone telling you your loved one's going to hell.
Yeah.
And I think it can be very traumatizing for children. If they've known someone, a parent, et cetera, that's taken their life and they think they're in hell, that's confusing and very traumatic. And I like what you both are saying.
Yeah.
I think it's super important. Let's talk about the soldier suicide issue. My son is a veteran. He deployed to Afghanistan in 2019 and 2020. He knows 5 people, veterans, that he deployed with and worked with, that have taken their lives. And one was a very close friend. It has been very, very disturbing for him. As with your brother, he saw no signs, especially with his best friend. There was nothing that was apparent to anybody. So what are your thoughts on what is going on with the soldier suicides? And this feels like it's a crisis. I don't know. Maybe I'm using too big a word.
I'll let Kim speak to it. I work in this space with the military as well, but Kim's inherently working on it.
Yeah, I do think it's a crisis. I do think, statistically, veterans are, I believe, 52 or 56, I forget, percent more likely to take their lives than civilians, just for the fact that they served, regardless of if they have been deployed or seen combat. I think we used to think it was, combat related, or it was always maybe, PTSD related. It's not always. So, there is a real change. When you are in the military, you're trained, right? You're battle ready, you're mission ready, and you are part of something larger than yourself, right? Which really comes with a sense of identity and a sense of meaning and a feeling of mattering, right? Even if your job is a little job, so to speak, it's still part of the much larger mission, and the mission can't happen if every little job and every big job doesn't happen the way it needs to. When you leave the military, when you're discharged and now you're back in the civilian world, there's not a lot of jobs out there that give you that similar meaning or that similar way to contribute and impact in that way. You don't feel something like, a piece of something larger than yourself. You don't feel that. And I think it's incredibly jarring. It's incredibly confusing. So when they do come out of their time of service, there's a period of like redefining, who am I? What am I gonna do with my life now?
It's an identity loss.
It really is.
Yeah.
It truly is.
I saw it with my own son. It's an identity loss when all of a sudden you don't have this big community, this unit, your rank. I mean, there's so many things that you lose.
Means so much in the military, your rank, but when you're out on the street, in a regular, small town USA, people really don't know what that means. They don't know what you did to get that rank, and they might not really care.
You're not wearing your uniform anymore. Right. You're not allowed to wear it anymore. I mean, it's...
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything you wore is gone.
Add to that any potential trauma or PTSD or, anything that you brought yourself, your childhood experiences, whatever, that you brought to your military service. Add that, any mental health challenges, any substance challenges, and it can just be a recipe for struggle and crisis. Veterans tend to keep it in, right? They tend to keep it in because another sort of ethos of the military, death before dishonor. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Well, they're not going to be the weak link, right? They're not going to be what they perceive as the one that would cause the weak link or cause the mission to fail because they didn't do their piece of that. So they hold it in, right? They're not going to burden their brothers and sisters who depend on each other, right? They're not going to burden. It's just how they're sort of rewired that way in the military. So they do hold it in. And then if you've got family and children and that responsibility, I think they're not going to share it, along with the stigma, right? That still does exist. We've gotten better. We've definitely gotten better, but there still is that stigma that struggling with mental health is a weakness. And we've worked at changing that, and it is changing, but it's slow going, right? It's slow going.
Any thoughts about this, Zaneta, with your own practice and the people you've worked with? And I know you've had brothers that have been in the military, so you understand the culture a lot, and you worked with TAPS for many, many years.
Yeah, the tide is changing. It is, but it's a slow change. And it's important that from the civilian side, people also recognize that suicide is a death by another name. My mentor, Alan Wolfelt, says it's a death by another name, and there's a lot of societal stigma that still exists around it. Used to be a crime. And so people say commit, like you committed a crime. And so just knowing from even a civilian perspective or someone that isn't in the military and where we're impacted or close to somebody who loved someone who died by suicide, we're not going to say they committed suicide. There's little things that we can do that shift the tide in the military and without the military.
Yeah.
So now you're going to say died by suicide.
Died by suicide.
I like
Took
this.
their own life, died by suicide. People aren't defined by how they die, right?
Right.
It is the very last sentence in a lifelong story. And when you read that last sentence, you don't know the whole story, right? You just can't. There's no way you could capture that. It's just how they died.
Their manner of death. No different than my dad dying of a heart attack.
Right. What I've seen in my own practice, and I want to weigh in with both of you on this, is that I have right now several people that have had siblings die by suicide, and their parents are terrified that they are going to take their lives and die by suicide. Was that an issue for you, Kim, with your parents, or no?
I don't know. I never asked them if they were worried about me. I was worried about them. Anytime, after John died, if I called the house and they didn't pick up by the third ring, in my mind, they were both dead on the bed. I immediately went to that worst case scenario. But it is a very real thing. I mean, I know several families, it's tragic, but one dies by suicide and they will lose other children in that
I've
family.
heard that.
Yeah.
So it does increase the chance of another family member, right?
Well, exposure to it does.
Okay.
You can just, by the fact that I have a family member that died by suicide, remove all of my other potential contributing factors, my own mental health, I am 3 to 4 times more likely to take my life because someone in my family has.
Wow.
So, and I think they don't really know, is it genetic? Some mental health things do, become more prominent in those who have family members that struggle with that too, but is it because exposure? Is it, I think it might be a combination of things. It might have done the opposite in my family, in that we didn't really know, I think, that John was struggling the way that he was. His personality, he was kind of an introvert anyway, so we wouldn't maybe have seen, big glaring warning signs. Even knowing what I know now, I don't necessarily, identify warning signs, but we shifted to talk about it right from the very beginning. We talk about it in our family. My mom made that decision that day. She said, we have to tell the truth about this. And it hadn't occurred to me either way that we would or we wouldn't, but she kind of set that tone, and we did, because he was and is profoundly loved regardless of how he died, right?
Right, absolutely. We want to talk about the way they lived. And the way they died is a moment in time. The way they lived is years.
Yes.
And people are so fascinated with the way they died, and then they move on, and we're like, wait, we want to talk about them as people.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Zaneta, I'm wondering, how can you help people find hope when they've had a suicide loss? What are some of the things that you've done?
I think it's important to point out that the statistic that Kim said, that when you have a suicide in your family, like, she's 3 to 4 times more likely, and people hold on to that and think we shouldn't talk about it. We're going to give somebody an idea to take their life. It's not prescriptive. And really throwing back the curtains on it is, I think, what makes the biggest difference, because suicide can be sneaky, and it's a slippery slope. And so in finding hope after something like that, it impacts us, a suicide loss, is really being able to talk about it, and being able to talk about the fact that, maybe we didn't see signs, or maybe we did see signs and we really tried. If someone is set to take their life, they're going to take their life. And treatment, 3 days in the hospital, that's meant to help us find a turning point, but it's not going to stop somebody who really just is experiencing a lot of darkness and is set on doing that. Peer support is unmatched. Being able to be with other people who lost a loved one to suicide and recognize that they're not alone, and they're not alone in not having seen it coming, right? Or having seen it coming and there's nothing they can do about it.
I like this idea, Zaneta, because I think it would bring a lot of peace to people if they thought, look, there's nothing I can do. If love would have saved them, they'd be here.
They'd be here.
And maybe I didn't even see the signs, and maybe if I did, I couldn't stop it anyway. So I've noticed that I've talked to people that have wanted to talk to psychics, and the thing that they want to know the most is that the person that they loved and that died is okay and at peace.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I remember in a support group that I had attended, they were talking about, what you were saying, different families have maybe, if I had seen, I would have done this. And of course, had we known, we would have gone to the ends of the earth and maybe done all the things, right? But there is a family out there who did indeed do all the things, everything that they were told to do, every hospitalization, every doctor, every therapist, every therapy, every medication, and their person still died. And in a strange way, that was a little bit comforting, I think, to my family, to learn, like, okay, like, love, John left a note, and he said, I know you love me. I know you love me. It wasn't that he, I think he couldn't absorb that love, or he couldn't see beyond what he thought was, worth ending his life for, right? But I think there are families who have done all the things, and even when you do everything you know to do, and everyone, every expert tells you to do, you can still lose someone, because it is a slippery slope. I think it's it's so important to talk about the grief. It's so important to talk about, the uniqueness of suicide grief. And it's so important to talk about that's feelings, thoughts of suicide are different than taking action towards suicide. So thoughts, I think, are a very normal human experience.
Right.
I think everyone at some point has had maybe a very, sort of fleeting suicidal thought or very lightweight, but that's a very normal, and where the line is, where you've got to know.
I had fleeting thoughts when my brother died.
Yeah,
For
I'm
months
sure.
and months and months. And they were real. And I thought, oh my gosh, wait a minute. Now I understand how you can get to that space.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you're saying, because Danielle Steele, who is a very famous author and has written many bestsellers, was very concerned about her son because he had had so many suicidal ideations, etc. She moved a therapist into the home in San Francisco and who lived with them, and her son took his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Despite the fact that they could do that.
That's
and
right.
they did that.
That's right.
So, sometimes we do it all and we can't.
Yep.
There's nothing else that
Yeah.
we can do. I'm just curious, Kim, I want to make sure we get to this. You are very involved with Stop Soldier Suicide and the Black Box Project. Can you tell us more about what that is?
Yeah, sure. I knew early on after John died that my heart was drawn to lost survivors of suicide. I just knew that. That's called postvention, so the work of caring for those impacted by suicide loss, that's called postvention. But because we are at higher risk and struggle with all the things that everyone else struggles with, right? Good postvention is preventative in nature. So, knowing that I wanted to work in postvention just sort of naturally bled into what prevention is. So the organization that I work for, the nonprofit Stop Soldier Suicide, on our clinical side of the house, we provide free, confidential telemental health care to veterans in active duty who are struggling, with suicide, thoughts of suicide, and, the people who are super high risk, those are the ones that we treat. We screen, we provide wraparound care. Again, it's all free, it's all confidential, which for active duty is very important because command is not going to find out that you're receiving mental health treatment. If you receive care from the VA and you're a veteran, that's not going to get on your record or anything like that. I don't work on that side of the house. I work on a really unique, it's truly a data science prevention initiative working with loss survivors. So what we do, it's called the Black Box Project. And if you think about what a black box is in aviation, same context, right? That will tell us what happened before that accident, that aviation accident. In this context, the black boxes are people's digital devices. So cell phones, tablets, and laptops. And what we do is we borrow those devices from families who have lost a loved one. We borrow their loved one's cell phone, laptop, and tablet to look at that data, take a snapshot essentially of the data that's saved on that device, and depersonalize it, de-identify it, and pool it with all of the other data we've collected to look for behavioral trends and patterns before someone died by suicide, so that we can use that to inform prevention, right? So that we can better understand what does risk look like digitally in someone's life. Our cell phones are on our hips, right? Mm-hmm. They know so much about us now. So we are using that data to better understand what does it look like to ramp up to crisis? What was happening in the week before, the month before, the year before that person died by suicide, so that we can, it might not be us that would create the intervention. There might be, someone else, another type of, nonprofit or something, but use that knowledge to then go and create something to save someone before they get to that crisis point. Mm-hmm. And my role, it's a privilege. I get to find the families to participate in this project. It's my favorite part of it. It's super cool. It's tech. It's innovative, and it's a data science project. But my favorite piece is what it brings to the families, because most suicide surviving families would do anything to impact this and save another family from experiencing what mm-hmm. mine has. This is a way to do that, right? It gives a little bit of meaning and purpose. I'm going to give you. You get to borrow the device, the families get it back. You borrow that device, and that data is gonna matter. It's gonna contribute to this that could save someone else's life. and it's it's just such it's a legacy to them. It's a way to honor them, and it's such a privilege to be able to do that.
I love this, Kim. So if people wanted to get involved, how would they get a hold of you?
So the website is stopsoldiersuicide.org, all one big word, stopsoldiersuicide.org, and on there is a page that talks about our program, the Black Box Project, and on there you can see me and my story. You can click and set up an appointment right through my calendar there, and just my ask is that families would just, if they're interested, to just explore it, participating, just have that conversation, and we'll talk about what it can look like. And for some families, it's a no-brainer. They want to do it right away, and others need some time. And we're here. We understand that. So.
And Zaneta, if I've had a suicide loss and I'm looking for hope and I want to go on one of your retreats, can you tell us more about those?
Yes, so we bring, so far it's women together who have had a loss, and some of them have lost a loved one through suicide. And it's an opportunity for peer support and to take care of themselves and to get really hopeful programming and see that we can move to this space that it becomes more about the fact that our loved one lived than they died or how they died, right?
I love this. And you're out in Utah doing these retreats and being in the wilderness and nature and being with other people.
Yep.
Wonderful. And how do people get a hold of you if they want to do that?
They can go to my website and see other retreats I've held, and also send a message to see if one of my retreats is a good fit for you, and that's at hoperisingtherapy.com.
Wonderful. And I know you also do a lot of therapy with people that have had losses.
I do.
So very good. Well, thank both of you today. Thank you, Zaneta. Thank you, Kim. This was great and so important, such an important topic. And we always like to close by saying, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
You don't need enough hope to get through the day. You don't need enough hope to get through a year. You just need enough hope to get through the next moment.
Even though we had this thing happen to us, it also happened for us.
We hold the memories of those that we cared for, that were a part in the making of our characters. And when they pass, those memories will come back when you need them. They become voices of intuition and of guidance.
We want to be a lifeline for somebody else. We want to inspire others and say, we know what it's like to be where you are, but you're not always going to be there. Just take our hand, believe us. We'll take the journey with you.
When life presents 1,000 reasons to mourn, show life that you have 1,001 reasons to smile.
We get through this one breath at a time. We don't do it a day at a time. That's healing. That's positive, and that's what the world wants to talk about.
People die. Love doesn't die.
We always say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours.